There's a shir on Likutei Sichos, book 21, the portion of Shemos, the first sicha. On the pasuk, Vayhi ki yaru hamiyaldot et Elokim vayas lehem batim, says that the Paroi wanted all the boys killed at birth. So he told the midwives, whenever you're called to a Jewish home to give birth, to help give birth, kill the boys. But the miyaldes, the midwives, feared Hashem. And because of that, Hashem rewarded them. Vayas lahem batim, he made for them batim, he made them into homes. What does that mean? So Gemara says in Masechta Sotah, Rav Shmuel, there's an argument between Rav and Shmuel what it means that he gifted them with homes. Doesn't mean he got them a home in Miami and a home in Jerusalem. Chad Amar, one says batei kahuna leviyah, that he gave them homes. In other words, families came from them, households. From their household came Kohuna to be Kohens and Levi to be Levites. Chad Omar, one of the other rabbis, Rav or Shmuel, says, Batei Malchut. He created from them households of kingship. Manda Omar Batei Kohuna Leviyah, the opinion that says that from their descendants were the households that came forth, Kohens and Levis. So that is Aharon and Moshe. Manda Omar Batei Malchus, those that say that there were from them came kings. David Nami mi Miriam Kasi. David also comes from Miriam. So the Sifri says, this is the Gemara Masechta Sotah. In the Sifri, remember the Sifri is a midrashic work, Mishnah time, but it's a work that compiles the halacha from the Torah. In the Sifri it says, Batim elu en yodei mahim. When it says that they were blessed with households, with prominent households, I wouldn't know what that means. However, there is a verse which is brought in Melachim, Book of Kings, that says, Miktzei esim shana, at the end of 20 years, Shabana Shlomo, Shnei Batim, that Shlomo built the two houses. One of those two houses is Beis Hashem, the house of Hashem, Zu Kohuna. This refers to Kohanim, because the Beis Hamikdash. As Beis HaMelech, Shlomo HaMelech finished two homes, the house of Hashem, and Beis HaMelech, the house of the king. So we see that the word house, in this context, is a house for Hashem, Beis HaMikdash. That would refer to the house, the fact that Kohanim came from them. And we have Beis HaMelech, we have the house of the king, which is the palace. That would be referring to the fact that the royal lineage of King David came from this family. So that's Yocheved, who was the mother of Moshe and Aaron. She had Kohanim and Leviim from her descendants. Miriam, who was the second midwife, the daughter of her mother Yocheved, she had kingship because she was married to Chur, who was from the tribe of Yehuda, and later on their descendants became the Davidic lineage. So according to this, we have to understand. Now let's jump and see what Rashi says. So we brought two things. We brought a Talmudic quote and a Sifri quote. So we have to understand why Rashi in our Parsha quotes this word that he wants to explain. He says that Hashem rewarded them by making them households, making them batim. And he explains, Bate Kohuna, this refers to the households of being a Kohen and being a Levi. Malchus and kingship, Shekorim Batim, those three kinds of things are called prominent households. How do we know that? Because it says a pasuk Vayiven es Beis Hashem, es Beis HaMelech, that he built, ostensibly referring to Shlomo, built the house of Hashem and the house of the king. Kohuna v'Levi mi Yocheved, u'Malchus mi Miriam. Ki de'isa Masechta Sotah. The Kohen and Levi origin comes from Yocheved, and kingship comes from Yud, and then Rashi finishes off and says, as is to be found in the tractate of Sotah in the Gemara. So from the one hand, Rashi brings that this refers to houses of kahuna and houses of kingship, just like in the Sifri, not like the Gemara, which says, the Gemara brought an argument. Rashi combines the argument like the Sifri and says it refers to both. Just, there's no two opinions. First, the one house is the house of Kohen and Leviness. The other house is the house of kingship. where the Gemara had an argument. He doesn't even bring an argument, Rashi. So you see, he's going in the path of the Sifri. On the other hand, he also brings, at the same time, he also brings the pasuk that the Sifri brings, that Shlomo built the house of Hashem and the house of the king, the palace. The Gemara doesn't bring that verse. So you see clearly he's quoting Sifri, not Gemara. He also says, like in the Sifri, that the Kohen and Leviness came from Yocheved, the kingship came from Miriam. Again, quoting Sifri, not like the Gemara, which doesn't say who the Kohen and Levi origin came from. He just says that it refers to Aaron and Moshe. And it says that the ones that say that kingship came from this mother and daughter, well, that would make sense because David also came from Miriam. So in other words, this is a bit technical. Rashi doesn't seem to be quoting Talmud yet, and he doesn't have to. He could be quoting Sifri, but yet when he ends off his explanation, he doesn't say as it says in Sifri. He says as it says in the Gemara in Masechta Sota. So if there's two versions of this teaching, and clearly he's not sticking to the Talmudic version, why, after he finishes explaining it, he says, as states in the Talmud? You're not quoting the Talmud, it seems to be. That's a bit of a technical question. Paragraph 2. We could explain simply. The first thing that we pointed out, we could explain according to the fact that the Mefarshim explain, in the argument of Rav and Shmuel in the Gemara, is really hinged on a previous argument. Who were these midwives? There's obviously a duo of midwives. What are the options? There weren't so many people around them. What are the options? It was either, there's an argument. One says a mother and daughter, which would be Yocheved and her daughter Miriam. One says a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law, which would be Yocheved and her daughter-in-law, Aharon's wife, Elisheva. So according to the opinion that it's a daughter-in-law and her mother-in-law, so when we talk about them being blessed, this pair, daughter-in-law and mother-in-law, having the household of Kohanim come from them, well, that would make sense. The wife of Aaron was the Kohen. And when you talk about the house of Levites coming, that would be from the mother-in-law, from Yocheved, because her children were all Levites by default. But according to the opinion that it was a mother and daughter duo, Yocheved and Miriam, so that in that instance, it's not just two kinds of households, Kohens and Levis, it's now the Kohen and Levi from Yocheved, and the second kind of house, which is coming from Miriam. Don't forget, she married a Yehuda individual, so her kids weren't Kohens or Levis. But her kids were blessed with being a household of kings, because from her began the lineage of kingship. So since Rashi has already said very clearly that he's of the opinion that in the simple reading of the pasuk, who's the duo of midwives? It's mother and daughter, Yocheved and Miriam. So then it's going to need to be that when we're talking about two kinds of households that come out, it's going to be Yocheved, who has a combination of Kohen and Levi, because she has Moshe and Aaron from her, and Miriam, the daughter, from her comes a different kind of household, a household of kingship. She's married to a Chur from the tribe of Yehuda. However, what we have to understand, she marries a Kolev. However, we have to understand the other questions we asked. And mainly, why does Rashi refer back to the Gemara in Masechta Sota? Even though he's bringing the verse that's not brought in the Gemara, it's only brought in Sifri. So this still baffles us. Also, we have to understand paragraph 3. What Rashi says, he brings a proof from a verse in Melachim, seems to be, that Shlomo built the house of Hashem and the house of the king. In other words, what we're trying to do by bringing a verse about building the house of Hashem, which is the Beis Hamikdash, and the house of the king, is trying to show that the word bayit doesn't just mean home. And just, like I say, build them a home in Miami, for the winter. A home is to be something prestigious. a home in the Jewish context, a household, what does it refer to? So that's why we bring a verse in Melachim, in the Book of Kings, which refers to the building of a house, that Shlomo built two houses, and they were both very respectable houses. One is the house of Hashem, the Beis Hamikdash. The other is the house of kingship, the palace. And this is therefore meant here when Hashem gave them houses, he gave them households of those that will serve in the house of Hashem, Koyanim, and those that will live in the palace. In other words, the house of kingship. So when Rashi brings that verse, first of all, what's Rashi bringing a proof? Rashi translates the word batim, doesn't actually mean homes. It means households. It means, in other words, families of, not the houses of kahuna. There's no how. You can't make a house to be a Kohen house. You can't say Kaddish on a dog, and you can't make a house a Kohen. A house is not a Kohen. But the house of a Kohen means you have a family that are Kohanim. Right? So the pasuk that Rashi brings, though, is about building physical houses. So why is he bringing about Shlomo building physical houses when he's trying to really say that this verse is telling us that Hashem blessed them with conceptual houses, with households of Kohanim and kingship? It's one question. Number two is, we find other verses where the concept of bayis refers to a household of Kohanim and Levim. Like Tehillim, we say it in Hallel. Beis Aharon Baruch Hashem, the household of Aaron, the house of Aaron, bless Hashem. We don't mean that the physical bricks and mortar of a house that belongs to a man called Aaron should bless Hashem. We mean the household of Kohanim, of Aaron, the Kohen, should bless Hashem. Beis HaLevi, the household, the family of Levi should bless Hashem. There we obviously know it doesn't mean the house of. It means the household of, the family of. The family of the Kohanim and Levim should bless Hashem. So similarly, when we talk about the household of kingship, there's a pasuk that says, Yasa Hashem la'adeni bayis ne'eman. Pasuk in Shemuel, Hashem should make for your servant, for my master, he's giving him a blessing, Hashem should make for my master a faithful home. Beis HaMelech Hazinu, the household of the king, listen up. Shimona Beis David, listen, house of David. Beis David Ke'Elokim. I'm not sure what this pasuk is saying. Beis David Ke'Elokim, I didn't look it up. Al Kapanim, in other words, it's a household of, not physical house. But here, it means the household of the family of the king, the household of the king. So why does Rashi bring here the verse that he comes to support? What does it mean that Hashem made them houses? He's bringing a verse that literally means Shlomo HaMelech built the physical structure, the physical house. It seems to be that verse shouldn't match what he's trying to say here. Also, verse 3, point 3, Rashi before us says, Vayiven es Beis Hashem, that Shlomo built the house of Hashem. There's no such pasuk. The pasuk that's quoted by Sifri says, Asher bana Shlomo, not Vayiven et. Asher bana Shlomo et shnei abatim et Beit Hashem et Beit HaMelech. That Shlomo built the two houses, the house of Hashem and the house of the king, the Beis HaMikdash and the palace. There's no place that it says Vayiven et Beit Hashem. Rashi seems to be concocting a pasuk that doesn't exist. You're going to see the Rebbe's answer is quite ingenious. So, number 4. The explanation is like this. What Rashi wants to prove from the verse that it says regarding King Solomon, that he built the house of Hashem and the house of the king, Beis HaMikdash and the palace, it's not the word house. He's not trying to prove that the word house can mean household, and it means household of the Kohanim, Levim. We know that from other verses, like we said. Beis Aaron Baruch Hashem, the house of Aaron, bless Hashem. That's a common thing to call the family of something the house of Aaron. I mean, I think even in modern day language, the house of the king of
House of Windsor.
House of Windsor doesn't mean some physical palace of Windsor. It means the family of. So we use it in that context. That's not what Rashi has to bring this verse for. But why does Rashi bring the verse? Because also we have it before. Rashi already has brought that bias in Vayigash, he's already told us that Avodah or Bnei Beisai, we've already referred to servants and the people of his house, the household. And many times in the Torah, that's not something we have to tell the 5-year-old. He knows that already. What does Rashi want to bring from the verse in Melachim about the building of the house of Hashem and the palace? Is to tell us that even when it says just houses without denoting what it means, it can mean houses of Kohen and Levi and houses of kingship. Like Rashi says, in that pasuk, it says that Shlomo, it says, Asher bana Shlomo et shnei habatim. Shlomo built the 2 houses. It just calls them habatim, the houses. And then it explains it's the house of Hashem, the house of the king. In other words, the word habatim on its own can be referring to the prestigious houses of Kohen, Levi, and kingship. And that's what Rashi is trying to bring from this verse. Comes the Rabbi now and says something eye-opening. We could say that really, our question was that Rashi seems to be concocting a verse that doesn't exist. The Rebbe says it's very possible it was a mistake by the editor, what we call the Bocher de Zetzer. How did they used to print things? You had to linotype. You had to take from a manuscript and put. So if the manuscript was a little bit unclear, you had to try and figure it out. The Rebbe said that really the way Rashi read was Habatim et Beit Hashem et Beit HaMelech. The word Habatim was changed by the transcriber to Vayiven. It's a mistake. It shouldn't say Vayiven. It should say Habatim. How does that mistake happen? So if you think about it, how would such a mistake creep in? So footnote 29 says, after it says that they were called Batim, and then the Rashi brings the part of the verse that starts Habatim es Beis Hashem es Beis HaMelech. The word Habatim could have been written in shorthand. Ha-beit dash on top, which is short for Habatim. The guy who was transcribing didn't understand. It's not a usual shortening to write Hey Beis Habatim. So, and Batim, Habatim. So he, what did he do? He changed it. So he wrote, instead of the Hey, Habatim, he wrote Vav Yud, because the Hey could really be a Vav and a Yud. The Hey is a Vav and Yud, but if he thought it was connected by accident, and then the Streichel, then a base, and then the dash would be like the nun, the missing nun. So Habatim. So he thought that could be the Hey became he mistranscribed. He thought it was supposed to be a Vav and a Yud, and then the base and the dash. He saw the dash as a nun. So Vayiven instead of Habatim. In other words, the Rebbe says must be a mistake crept in over here. And what Rashi is trying to tell us that the word batim, stam, when you say households, it can mean the prestigious households of Kohen and kingship. Because there, in the verse about Shlomo Melech, the Torah immediately translates the word, the households of, and he says, house, which houses are we talking about? Even though it says house without any description, but it actually means the prestigious houses of Hashem's house, the Beis Hamikdash, and the king's house. So therefore, we understand that here where Hashem says in the Torah that he blesses them with households, without saying what, it can also mean, just like there, prestigious households of the palace of Hashem, as the Kohenis, and the palace of the kingship. And now we'll understand that it's also no problem to say that that there it actually means, we asked you, bringing a verse that there it means an actual house of bricks and mortar. That's not an issue, because here we weren't trying to prove that the houses here are houses, they're households, families of Kohen and Levis. We're just trying to prove that the batim, the word habatim, without description, can mean the prestigious houses of Cohen and king. But we do have to understand, paragraph 5, what's the imperative in the simple reading to learn that it means these three kinds of houses. The household of being a Kohen, that they're going to start the family of Kohen and Levi and kingship. You could learn that it just means to give them good families. Actually, you could also, no, sorry, I'm misreading that. You could say it means to build homes. Having extra homes is pretty good. And there are commentaries that say that the Ibn Ezra says that Hashem made them hidden homes. They were being searched for, right? He said that they shouldn't be able to be found. And in this way, Hashem made them, we call them hideaway homes, so they should be safe from Paroi. Why can't we say that? Why do we have to say that when it says Hashem rewarded them, made them homes, that it means households, that it means he made them prestigious families? Maybe it meant he made them homes. You have a safe house, right? So there's two things here. Why don't we just say it means houses physically? First of all, that two things it could have meant. One is that Hashem made them houses to save them from Paroi. B, that Taka, it means households, children. But maybe this was the reward for them not killing the children upon birth. They were helped give birth. They helped the mothers give birth in Egypt. Maybe they were blessed with many children. Why does it have to mean Vayaslehem Batim? They were blessed with households. Why does it have to mean specified households of Kohen, Levi, and kingship? Maybe it just means they were with households of multiple children. Which both of these interpretations fit more in the simple reading. First of all, the word Batim, if you say it means that Hashem made them houses, literally edifices, is good. If you say that it means Hashem made them bigger families, also good. But why do you need to go and run to something which seems to be a bit of a forced interpretation that the word households here is that Hashem blessed them with extraordinary households? Where do you see that? Why? Knows Rashi, it could be Midrashic, but Rashi doesn't bring a Midrashic interpretation if he can read simply. So just read simply, they were good people, they didn't kill the kids at childbirth. Hashem blessed them either by making them a safe home where they were protected, or Hashem gave them many kids. Number two, it would seem that it would make more sense to say that the fact that Hashem made them homes, which is past tense, is that those homes had already been created. In the way we're learning, the way Rashi teaches us now, these homes need to be created. Hashem will bring from them in the future Kohen, the line of Kohanim, and the line of kingship, where it sounds Vayaslem, Hashem saw that they feared God, and he made them in the past. But this is not the past, this is a future tense. So why does Rashi bring us to a interpretation which seems to be non-literal if he could have stuck to a very literal interpretation? There needs to be a reason why he sees an imperative from the very narrative, that the way the 5-year-old will read it, that you need to be injected here some kind of elaborate household that they're blessed with. Kohen, Levi, and kingship. Paragraph 6. So the explanation is, these explanations Rashi negates by the fact that Rashi puts this interpretation in continuation to the earlier words. What are the earlier? What are the next words? Vayetev Elokim lamiyaldot. I'm sorry, the previous pasuk. It says Hashem did good to the midwives. Mahu tova. Rashi asks, what is the good? The Torah doesn't specify the good. Hashem did something nice for them. Rashi says that's the next pasuk. What did he do nice to them? Layas lehem batim, he made them homes. This tells us that not the fact that it says he did good to them is coming to explain and forcing us to learn that the fact that he made them homes is something extraordinary, not just regular. If the pasuk would just mean that Hashem made them homes to save them, then it would have just said Vayiven lahem batim. Hashem saw they feared God and he built them homes. From the fact that the Torah says, and he did good to them, that's not just protecting them. That's something extraordinarily good. There's something beyond what one would expect to happen. Hashem did something nice for them. Similarly, just protecting them, that's not nice. That's decency. That's not something good, extra good he's done for them. Similarly, if you're just going to give them kids commensurate with the fact that they helped give birth to kids, they're going to have big families. That's not something extraordinary to them. All the Jews were blessed like that. All the Jews were blessed to be extraordinarily fruitful. That's not something special for them. So that's why Rashi learns from the fact that the Torah promises them, Vayetev Elikim, that Hashem did good to them. He says that good is being spelled out. Vayasleim Batim, he made them households, special households, blessed households of being Levis, being Kohanim, and being kingship. Not just to add a lot of kids. They had prestigious families. Paragraph 7, in order to emphasize this, Rashi says, go and look in the Masechta Saita, the tractate Saita. I'm not just telling you where I got it from, because yes, it does say it in the Sifri. I want you to look in the Gemara. Why? Because according to all the interpretations we said, the other commentaries, the reward of making homes for them, if we say it means, if we say that Hashem made them homes to protect them, or that Hashem made them a lot of kids, so we understand how it is midah keneged midah. We understand how it's quid pro quo. It's Hashem saying, you made my kids be born. You didn't kill as midwives. You delivered babies. I need to protect you. You protected the kids. I got to protect you. In other words, you see the commensurate reward. You made them have more kids. I'll make you have more kids. But the way Rashi says that they were blessed with an extraordinary reward of special households, where is the midah keneged midah, the reward corresponding to their deeds? They brought children to life, but they're getting a blessing, a side blessing, that they're getting prestigious families. How does that relate to the same thing that they did? Where's the correspondingness of it? So Rashi says, look in Masechta Saita, paragraph 8, and you will see that the Gemara there talks about, the Mishnah speaks about the midah sha'adam meided ba, in the way a person acts down below, meidedim lo, that's the way Hashem meets out and treats him. And the things that the Gemara and the tractate Saita enunciate and explain, they include not just the general thing that the person has done, which Hashem rewards him or punishes him, commensurate with what he's done, but even in the details. So now we'll understand that the fact that Hashem gave them special households that would give birth to Kohens and Levis and kings, this is actually very much according to the detail of what they did. What did those midwives do? The midwives, not just they helped them give birth, and there should be Jewish families, but through that, they helped the birth of the foundational members of the Jewish people, which from them come the Jews for all of generations. And this is why their reward was, they also were, the same way they gave birth to, so to speak, the foundational generation of the people of Israel. The Jewish people were born in Egypt. They became a nation after they left Egypt, but it's the generation that was born into Egypt that became the nucleus of the Jewish people. Because they established the Jewish people for all times, Hashem gave them a gift that they would establish a certain aspect, a certain pedigree, a certain line within the Jewish people that would also be something unique to the end of times. They establish a whole new genre, how do you say it? Genre of people, a class of people, Leviim, Kohanim, and kingship that continues all the way till the end of time, which is not the case in the Sifri, which speaks about Yocheved had the merit that she had the Kohen come from her, and Miriam had the merit that the kingship came from her. So in the Sifri, it's used to explain a general concept. The Sifri there had said a concept that anybody who brings himself close to Hashem by doing something extraordinary for Hashem, Hashem brings him close as well. But the Sifri doesn't talk about it in being a corresponding, the exact correspondence of the reward to the deed. He just says generally, if you generally bring yourself close to Hashem, anything you do that brings you close to Hashem, Hashem does nice things to you. Also, he doesn't speak about it as in the context of building the entire Jewish nation. And so therefore, he doesn't say there, Bote Kahuna. He doesn't call it, let's see the Lashon of the Sifri. Let me go back. He says, Zachsa Yocheved likahuna, or Miriam lamalchus. Yocheved merited Kohenness, Miriam kingship. He doesn't emphasize that they merited to create the household for all times of kingship and Kohenness. The Sifri is not getting into that detail. Rashi sends you to the Gemara. The Gemara is talking in a detailed way. We have to know Hashem treats us the way we treat him, even in all the details. Yocheved and Miriam created the nucleus and the future for all times of the Jewish people. They were blessed with creating a new kind of division and a new pedigree within the Jewish people for all times. Kahuna and Malchus. Paragraph 9. We could say that by Rashi pointing our attention to the Talmud in Masechta Sotah, there's another question in Rashi that's also answered. What is that? The beginning of the pasuk is that it was when the midwives feared Hashem. So what does it seem that the reward came for? The reward came because they were fearing of God. But what is the reward? The reward is not fearingness. The reward is, as the Medrash says, Vayetev, that Hashem did good to them. And that's, says the Medrash, is what it says. What's the reward of God-fearingness? Torah. Torah is the reward of fearing God. How does the Medrash derive that? Because Yocheved feared God, that's why she didn't listen to Paroi. Who was her son? Moshe. About Moshe, it says, when he was born, it says, Ki Tov, he was good. And the Torah was given through him. The Torah is called good also. Lekach Tov, the Torah is called a good purchase for the Jews, a good gift for the Jews. And the Torah is called on Moshe's name, as it says in the prophet, remember the Torah of Moshe, my servant. Miriam had Betzalel who came out of her. Betzalel was the architect of the Mishkan. He was full of wisdom. As it says, Hashem says, I will fill him with the spirit of Hashem. And he made the holding place for the Torah. He made the Holy Ark. So what do we see? We see that the Medrash says the reward for fear of Hashem is goodness, is Torah. Which even in the simple reading of the Pasuk, it would seem that this is more applicable to the verse that when it was that the midwives feared Hashem. So what does it say about the Torah? The Torah is given to us to fear Hashem, which is a huge, incredible reward to have a son who embodies Torah. So if so, we don't have to say that when it says in the verse Vayetev Elikim Lamiyaldas, that Hashem did good to the midwives, that it goes on the pasuk, as Rashi says, that it goes on the pasuk that he made them into households. The reward is in the very fear that they had of God. They also had children that created, that were either Moshe gave the Torah or Betzalel built the home for the Torah, which the Torah is about fearing God. But Rashi says no. But I want you to look in the tractate in Sotah. because this reward is coming. This reward is coming. Why did they get this reward? Because they established the permanence of the house of Israel. They also get to establish new families that are permanently blessed with pedigree of Kayat and kingship till the end of times. This last few paragraphs, I'm sorry I didn't explain what. Paragraph 10. In the Mishnah, and it's an interesting topic in the Tractate of Sota that speaks to us about Midah Keneged Midah. Hashem reacts commensurate to the way we act down here. And the Gemara explains it doesn't have to really to do with the feeling of the person. It has to do with what did they do. Hashem says, you did this, I'm going to give you something similar in the world of action down below. And we find this in the simple reading of the Pasuk, as Rashi has already brought the concept of Midah Keneged Midah, that there's quid pro quo. Where does Rashi bring it? It says, they, the generation of the flood, sinned by uncovering an incredible, vast abyss of wickedness. They were punished with the abyss. The water is coming up from the abyss and engulfing them. So we already know that there's a certain correspondingness based on what we do. That's the way Hashem punishes or rewards. And that's why in the simple reading of the Pasuk, we understand that the great gift that has been given to these midwives is not so much for their God-fearingness. That's a feeling. It's mainly for their action. The Gemara in Sota talks mainly about action. They literally were the ones that physically gave birth to the children. They were called by two other names. Yocheved and Miriam were called also Shifra. Shifra means to make good. They smoothed out and they bathed and prepared the child after birth. Pua, cooing. It's like cooing. That they spoke and they cooed to the child. In other words, they literally did actions that took care of birthing and immediately taking care of the children upon birth. They kept the children alive. In other words, they established living Jewish children, which that was the future. That was the establishment of the Jewish people. And that's what they're getting rewarded for. Not so much. In other words, they're not getting rewarded for their God-fearingness. Yes, if they're getting rewarded for their fear of God, you could say they're rewarded with having a son who gives Torah, or a son who's the architect to make the Aron that holds Torah. No, we're saying, but they're being blessed here. Especially, don't forget that Moshe doesn't keep the Torah; he gives it to Yeshua. So the blessing, the true blessing they get here for their act of creating and nurturing, bringing the people of Israel into being, is that they get also new households that emerge from their children till the end of time. This is a true proper midah keneged midah. This is a proper reward for their deed of establishing the Jewish nation. Paragraph 11. So here we see how all the aspects of Torah are so exact. Even though the fact that Yocheved and Miriam merited to these blessings is really agadic and it's midrashic, but we see that there's a difference in which medrash you take a look at. The way Rashi brings it, and from the Gemara, and the way the medrash brings it from Sifri. In other words, the differences will emerge from the different ways that these portions of Torah study. In other words, there's the truth of Torah, but the way it's seen from the prism and the lens of Pshat, or Remez, allegory, or Drush, or Sod, right? So in the Medrash, which is more expounding and agadic, the whole purpose of the Medrash is supposed to also be inspirational, to pull the heart of person, to get the person inspired, supposed to speak to the feeling, supposed to lead to fearing God. So that's why in the Medrash, what's emphasized is the fact that the midwives feared God and didn't listen to Pareh. And what did they get as a reward? that through them, through their children, came the aspect that brings awe and reverence of Hashem to us, which is Torah. The Sifri, however, which is mainly a book of halacha, got to do with action. Halacha is actual behavior. So it talks to us about Miriam and Yocheved being blessed for what they did. For what they did, their deed, they got a factual reality in their families that the house of Kahuna and the house of kingship was established. However, this emphasis that we talk about their deed, it's not their individual deed. We're talking about the fact that they did good deeds. They generally brought themselves near to Hashem. They did what Hashem wanted. They didn't listen to what Pharaoh wanted, without getting into the detail. Rashi, who's the literal reading, gets into the detail. He says, let's look at what they actually did. So we see the main thing is not the expounding, the main thing is not the inspiration, the main thing is deed. What was actually done, what was the individual and detailed thing that was done is that they established the future of the deed that they did was to establish the future Jewish people. That's why they get blessed with a blessing that they also have something established within their families that are unique until the end of time within the Jewish people, the house of Kahuna, Leviah, and the house of kingship. And that's also connected, as Rashi brings, to the two physical homes that we talk about, Shlomo HaMelech building the house of Hashem and the palace, because the main thing that we attribute to Yocheved and Miriam in the world of Pshat, in the world of action, is the fact that they brought Jewish children into the world of reality and kept them alive and took care of their early infancy. Okay, so this is wrapped up basically the look at what Rashi is telling us, that they did this incredible act of giving birth to the children in Egypt. Hashem gave them a gift. He made them same way they created the future Jewish people. He created within them, within each one of them, Miriam, the future house of kingdom, and Yocheved, the future house of Kohen and Levi. They each got a special blessing to be the to establish unique homes from within their immediate family, their descendants. Now we're going to teach ourselves a lesson here. Paragraph 12. From this Rashi, we can take out a very special lesson. Seemingly, you could say, no. The fact that Moshe the Torah was given through Moshe, it's not really commensurate with what Yocheved did, because remember, we said she established the children, she established the future people. So really, her reward commensurate to her deeds is really the fact that there was a new family established from her. But still, it's a pretty good reward to have a child who's Moshe Rabbeinu. So why are we emphasizing that she had households of Kohanim and kingship? Why don't we just say she had a son like Moshe? Isn't that the best thing you could say that happened to her? Says the Rebbe, we're emphasizing here, no, that the bigger reward is that she has a household that emanates from her. What's the biggest nachas, the biggest words for a Yiddish mama, for a Jewish mother, is that she has botei kahuna levi machas. She has households of Kohenship and kingship. Not so much that she has one son that's a big scholar, a son who's a big erudite in Torah, sharp, but that there is established homes of kahuna, homes of malchus, Jewish children, and children. Not that she has a son who's a star, but that there are future generations and households of students that help continue Jewish homes through sharing with other Jewish children, that they should be able to be part of these households of Kohenis and Leviah and Malchus. What does that mean spiritually? That even though generally we say the Kohanim and the Leviim, they're not the generic Jew. They are the ones that have to be separated to be always ready to serve Hashem. And the house, the children, the whole tribe of Levi has to be a tribe that's separated to serve in the Beis Hamikdash. But the Kohanim are the ones that are even more separated because they have to work in bringing the sacrifices and the incense in the Beis Hamikdash. As we know, a Kohen is not allowed to be defiled to a dead body. He's not allowed to go out in the time of the Beis Hamikdash. He can't go out of Israel because Israel has a certain impurity to it. A Levi doesn't have that restriction. What it means is that there's two aspects. There's one aspect of to be like a Kohen, in other words, to be somewhat separate from the worldly matters, connection to Hashem, which a Levi is allowed to exit Israel. He's allowed to go to a cemetery. So, in other words, there's an aspect where we have to stay totally ensconced in holiness. Then there's the aspect of the Levi behavior where we are allowed to go out and we have to go out. And that's the avodah of making the world even if it may be like a cemetery, bringing holiness there as well. The Levi has to be able to operate in that kind of environment and still remain connected to Hashem, not from staying within, but from even while he's without, even while he's outside, he's able to create the connectedness to Hashem wherever he is. The Levi, however, at the same time that can go outside where a Kohen can't go, he still has to be connected to the Kohen. It says the Levi has to service the Kohen. He has to service the Kohen who's in the holy place. So we understand that even the Levi also has restrictions because the Levi is still somewhat attached to the Kohen. So even when he's outside, there's still a connection to holiness. Where do we see the total infiltration of unholiness by Kedusha? That's when we talk about kingship. And that's the real nachas that a Jewish mother has. When she can have when she can have children, when there's a future Judaism, which includes those that are more connected and stay inside the holy temple, those that are connected to those that are inside the temple, but they're outside, and those that are like kings, able to rule and reign and bring Hashem's kingship to all aspects of creation. And then when we have this combination, this creates an ability for us to be able to go out of this exile, as it was in Egypt. Eventually, all the forces of Hashem, all the legions of Hashem, the Jewish people went out. Who established those children? The midwives. They all went out from Israel. And at their head was Moshe. Moshe was like a king. And Aaron was the Kohen. And their tribe was the tribe of Levi. And they all went out with an outstretched arm. So this is the hope also for now, that we should continue to build homes that are both on the one hand connected to the holiness, the other hand able to take a step out near holiness, and even go a few steps out and go into the unholiness of the world, that still, rather than succumb to the world, rule in the world and bring kedusha, bring holiness, the holiness of Hashem there.